What's your objections or what questions do you have about that?
Um, at least for me, it doesn't seem like I can have good epistemic warrant to believe that God exists, and by extension, Jesus would be God, I guess.
Um, your contention is Jesus being God, or you just don't believe in God, right?
Yeah, I don't believe in God, but I mean, obviously, for Jesus to be God, God. Oh, you back?
Well,
Wait. He's been.
dispensationalism, um, essentially was created about like the late 1700s, early 1800s, with the Schofield Bible and the John R. Hardy preaching, because he was a Christian Zionist. The five solas is we are saved by fide alone, which is faith alone, through gratia alone, grace alone, in Christus alone. Sola scriptura, which is the Bible's ultimate authority, and all glory and grace to God, which is sola gloria.
What's
Now
going
back
on,
to you.
Zach? I see you in the chat there.
Now back to you, Brody. So you don't. So now next question, because we can start with this. So where do you think like this whole thing's how we ended up where we're at? Like me and you right here talking. Like where did that come from? How does that come from?
How far back do you want me to go?
I'm saying what the beginning.
Oh, the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you're doing well, Zach. But yeah, I mean, so do I ultimately know? No, but I think there are many different accounts you could give as an atheist that would be sufficient. One would be, I can just give you one, right? Like one could just be that there was a necessary initial state of the natural world, and that's like where everything stemmed from.
A necessary. What's necessary? What makes it necessary?
Something that's necessary is just something that obtains in all possible worlds, right? We're talking like metaphysically necessary, at least, right? Like within that modal scope.
Well, in my worldview, it's metaphysically necessary. In your worldview, wouldn't it be like more materialist and physical?
Well, I don't see any problem with saying if something is material or physical, that it can't be necessary, like metaphysically necessary.
But what I'm saying is all those things that were necessary, where did they come from? Who put them in place? How did they come to exist?
Well, if they're at an initial state, they wouldn't come from anywhere.
What do you mean an initial state? So they've existed forever?
No, there's just a time zero, like T0.
So you're saying that in T0, we had everything necessary for all of this to come about?
Yeah, I'm just saying that's like a sufficient explanation. That's one of the ones you can give.
And how do you think that came about, though? Like, was there a cause?
Well, no, trivially no. Because if it's an initial state, then there can't be a cause, right? If there's no time beforehand, it would be incoherent to talk about like a cause.
Why would it be the science? Doesn't science argue that there was a cause, though, with the Big Bang?
I mean, there might be. You could say that there's a cause for the Big Bang, just to say that there's a cause for the expansion or something. Maybe like there could be different accounts of something like that, like inflation or whatever. I'm not a very big science guy. What I do know is that like at least from the physicists I read, not many physicists will say things like, "Oh, we know what happened before the Big Bang," right? But I mean, you could just say something like, "Well, there was a necessary singularity" or something like that.
Yeah, no, because I've heard like even like Dawkins talk about there's like some John the Baptist molecule, some like forerunner that brought in the universe, and I'm just like, this just sounds like Christianity the long way.
Well, there's plenty of different accounts. Like you could say something like there was a necessary quantum fluctuation. You could say that there's like a singularity, right? It's like some people are proponents of like an infinite regress, or So there's a couple.
So your stance is essentially you don't know that God exists, or you don't think that God exists? Because I think those are two different things.
Yeah, I don't know that God exists.
So you're not an atheist.
Well, atheist is just a belief claim, right? I don't believe in a God.
No, atheist means that you don't believe in a God. There's a difference between not believing in God and not knowing if God exists. That's my point.
No,
There's a
yes,
very
that is
big
true,
difference. There's a very big difference, brother.
right, but I think you might be talking about strong atheism, which is to say that I believe that God doesn't exist. So there's a difference between saying I don't believe that God exists and I believe God doesn't exist. Where you put the not there matters a lot. Like if I gave you like let's say I brought to you a crate, right? You can't see what's in the crate. Is there, and I told you there can either be a green apple or a red apple. If I asked you, do you believe that there's a green apple in there? What would you say?
There could be.
Well, that's not the question I asked you.
What was the question you asked me again? I'm sorry.
Do you believe that there's a red apple in there?
Like, if you tell me there's a red apple, or do I just think that, like, I'm randomly thinking that?
I'm just asking you, like.
Yeah, because I
handed
don't
you a
know,
crate.
because I don't know anything's in the crate. I could think anything's in there.
Well, I know you can think anything's in there, but I'm asking you if I brought you the crate and you can't see inside, and I told you there can either be a red apple or a green apple, and then I asked you, is there a red apple in there? What would you say? Do you believe that there is one?
Well, I would truly say I don't know, but if you had to make me make a choice, I would probably believe that there's a red apple in there.
What?
I said you can't. You're making me make a choice, right? Because I would say I don't know if there's a green or red apple. But if you're giving me the choice,
you could just say I don't believe that there's a red apple in there, right? There's a difference between saying like I don't. I'm just asking you, do you currently believe that there's a red apple in there? And if you say no, well then it's just true that like
no,
you don't have the belief. Like you don't believe that there is a red apple in there currently, right?
Yeah, but what I'm telling you is that there is a difference between saying I don't know if there is a God versus saying I don't believe in God. Because if you don't believe in God, that's what an atheist is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
I'm saying like I don't believe that I don't believe in God. Yeah.
No, but
truthfully, obviously, I don't because knowledge is knowledge. If we're going by the traditional like definition, is just justified true belief. So like if you don't believe that there is a God, then trivially you don't know that there's a God, right?
No, but that's what I'm asking. Which one is it? Is there no God, or are you just not certain? There's a difference.
Well, the second one.
So you're not certain. You're not even an atheist. You're an agnostic, brother.
They can be coextensive.
I don't think they can be coexistent.
Well, so it depends what account you're bringing out. Like I'm just using the traditional like Oxford definitions. Like one is a knowledge claim, the other is a belief claim. Right?
Atheism is clearly saying there is no God. Agnostics are saying I don't know if there is one.
That's not true.
That's a very what? There's no other difference. There's a very big difference. They're not the same. You can't be. How can you be both? I don't get that.
No, so I'm just going by the definition on Oxford, right? Like agnostic will just say something like, I don't know if we can know that there is a God. An atheist is somebody who like disbelieves in God or lacks the belief in God. That's all it means. So if you don't currently believe that there is a God, well, then you're just an atheist. You don't have to believe that there is no God, right?
No, I think there's a clear distinction, but we don't have to get into that. Okay, so now let's go to we'll just move on because I would stick on this point forever. I don't think you're an atheist, but it's okay.
That's
so
fine.
now, okay, so now, okay, do you believe like all of this is like random?
No.
Okay, so if it's not random, what's guiding it?
Wait, when you say like, depends what it is, right? Like when you say what's guiding it, what depends.
Everything. What guides the universe? Do you think the universe it has intelligent design behind it, or do you think the universe is just random?
Well, so there might be some things that are random, but there might be some things that like have guiding forces, right? An example would be like it's not random that objects that are, that are, I guess, very large in mass are like more attracted to each other. That's not random, right? There is a force, the guiding force that is responsible for that, right? It's not random that creatures that are more fit for their environment, breed more, right? Those aren't random like forces. There might be like random quantum fluctuations, right? Potentially, like I'm sympathetic to that. So it depends what you're asking.
Oh, what do you mean? It's very simple. What do you believe that the world that we live in and the universe that we live in was created or guided by an intelligent mind, or do you think that it just randomly occurred over 15 billion years with like chemicals and matter crashing into each other and having reactions?
Well, when you say like randomly, what do you mean?
Because if it's random, if it's not guided, it's random. If there's no mind behind it, it's just chaos and anarchy and like everything's missing.
Okay, so your definition for something being random is just that it wasn't guided by a mind.
Yeah, it wasn't guided. It's not
Oh,
guided.
well then, okay, well then,
because
well,
we
yeah,
because
that-
we
that's
have
what you mean
laws.
by
We have
random, for sure.
laws. We have laws in this universe where like things work a certain way and don't work outside of that paradigm.
Well, okay, but like, so something can be metaphysically necessary, and if the fact that it's metaphysically necessary isn't guided by a mind, well, then that's just going to be random. If that's true, then yeah. But I mean, like, God's existence isn't like the fact that God exists isn't guided by a mind. He wasn't created, right?
God is the ultimate mind. He's the source mind. He's the
Yeah, but he wasn't
intelligent
created
mind.
by a mind, right?
He is the mind that creates.
I know he's the mind that creates, but what I'm asking is, like, God wasn't created by a mind, right?
No, God is eternal, outside of time, outside of space, matter, comprehension.
Right. So, like, if I said something like,
He's the
Well, since
uncaused
God-
cause.
right, so since God wasn't created by a mind, right? And
Okay.
he exists necessarily, and then I say that there just exists the natural world at like a necessary interest or something, right? Like what's the symmetry breaker? I guess because you could just say like, well, God just randomly is there randomly, I suppose, because his existence isn't guided by like the fact that he exists isn't guided by a mind, right? It wasn't brought into being. So I'm not really sure what you mean.
But the way that we're established, we would understand that we were designed by a mind. It has to come from some source. God doesn't have to come from a source. He is the source.
Wait, we have to
And-
come from a source? What do you mean?
God is the source of all things. He's the creator of all things. My point is if we just go based on like something random is constantly happening and consistently happening, that doesn't lead to order. That doesn't lead to laws that are established. If that was the case, the laws would change all the time.
What's the argument for that? Why can't the laws just be necessary?
Okay, if they're necessary, who's establishing that they're necessary?
You don't have to. So something can exist necessarily and have it not be established by anything, right? Being necessary is just like it obtains in all possible worlds, right? Like just because you could say like God is necessary, but like he doesn't uphold. He's not going to like uphold his own existence. That doesn't make much sense. Or like some other being doesn't uphold its own existence or his existence, right? But he still exists necessarily.
Yeah, but my question is, we know that these things are created, though. So like atoms just exist necessarily. Okay,
Well,
where'd they come from?
So atoms and like fundamental particles are just going to be fluctuations of quantum fields. So if you're asking me like where did quantum fields come from, like I don't really see any problem in like I ask me where did they come from? I don't know, but I think it's possible that they just exist necessarily with the singularity or something.
See now that is true. You could make those arguments, and I can listen to those arguments. I'm not opposed to them. But ultimately, we have to go downstream, right? So
Downstream,
because we have to go downstream because like we're not always gonna have these discussions about atheism or God from I would say like a metaphysical perspective or something like that, right? So if like my question would be, because I understand that there's probably not any evidence that I can give you that would convince you right now that God exists. Because I would use, let's say, creation. You would say, oh, that doesn't mean anything, right? Like nature doesn't mean anything to you.
but you just look at like the relative, like you would just look at the explanatory power and like sort of compare that with the theoretical commitments and ontological commitments.
I think the ontological and the theological components of the worldview is more important because of the fruit that it gives and the fruit that it bears.
I would just be asking, like, what are the virtues of this explanation you're giving me over the one I'm giving?
Well, because when I've had conversations with atheists, when we get to certain discussions, it doesn't really look like that worldview produces fruits that are necessary or good for humanity. For example, I've had about, let's say, like yesterday, I had 3 atheists tell me that evil is subjective and that good and evil don't truly exist, and that evil.
I'm not really
is upsetting
wondering.
existence.
Well, I'm not really like asking. That's not really the conversation I kind of want to have, because that conversation is a little bit boring. Just talking about like, oh, like what's better for society. I mean, we can talk about that another day.
Well, it's not what's
when I'm asking
better.
for virtues, I'm asking for like the epistemic virtues.
It's the virtues of, like, for example, since you don't know anything, you can't derive an ought from an is.
Wait, since I don't know anything, what do you mean?
meaning that you have no basis for your understanding of where creation is, why you live, why you exist, why you have purpose. You don't have a basis outside of yourself, so you can't get an ought from an is. Like you
Well,
ought to
this is just
behave in
like,
this manner. You can't with atheism.
okay, we can. That's kind of like a separate discussion. This because like I could just literally deny like objective morals. I could be like, yeah, who cares? Because what I'm interested in right now is understanding like why God exists, like an argument, trying to get in like an argument that would establish that.
Well, I think when you speak to atheists, you guys can play also the denying game with God. Because like just because the thing is like most atheists because they can define, for example, like certain mechanisms that exist in the world, that doesn't like they use that as a way to deny the person who created the mechanism.
Yeah, well, that's
Because
the argument I'm looking for is the argument that established that a person created the mechanism.
well, the thing is, you guys it doesn't track. You guys won't acknowledge it. That's the point. So, like for example, if I was just to use creation, just in general, the whole entire universe, the planets, the stars, the Earth, the Moon, the Sun, everything, how it's held in place, how it rotates the way it's supposed to be rotate, how we can know the weather because we understand it. Just all the things that are put in place without anything that we've done. That to me shows that there's an intelligent mind behind all this. And then
And
you
what's
probably
that?
just, and then you would tell me, oh, it's like natural processes and like
Well, I'm just
necessary
like, how do we
things.
determine one over the other? Like, how does the evidence support one over the other?
Because do we create everything,
But
or do
that's just the question.
meaning or like no, I'm saying like for example the things that we find in science, do we create those things or we discover those things?
The things that we find in science, do we discover them or
Yeah, do we
create them?
discover them or do we create them?
I mean, I guess depends what you're talking about. Because I mean, like, if you're talking about computers,
meaning do they exist already? Right?
like for
And then-
most things, yeah. I
And
would
then
say.
we just discover that they exist.
For some things, yes.
Because that to me is another thing, right? Like we didn't create the laws of physics. It was already there. We just discovered it. So that means somebody put it there.
Well, no,
in
no.
place.
Wait, what's the argument for that? I would need an argument for that.
It's in place. It doesn't work any other way.
Well, that's just repeating the claim.
Well, that is repeating the claim, but my point is, to me, that's not random because
Well,
you don't get order
if your argument is
from
just
randomness.
well, that's not an argument. It's repeating the claim is just
No.
stating the thing that like requires.
I'm not saying it's an argument. What I'm saying is that I already like when I speak to people, because you seem like a nice guy, right? But if you have to beg me, or if you're begging the question, like I need evidence for God, I already know that there's not much evidence I can give you that'll change your mind, essentially.
Okay, so
I
you
can
don't
say-
have an argument.
No, I do have an argument. My argument
what's
is
the
not,
argument?
it's not convincing for you. That's the problem. See?
Well, you haven't given an argument. You just repeated the claim.
No, I gave you the argument. I think creation is a proof of God. I think morality is a proof of God, and I think your conscience is a proof of God.
Well, you understand, like, I was asking, like, you said creation is proof of God. Like, I was asking for the argument for that. So, do you have an argument for that, or do you not have an argument for that? I'm not trying to be an asshole.
I think that when we look at a painting, we know that a painter made it. We look at a chair, we say, oh, somebody built that chair. You look at a table, somebody built that table. We see a car, somebody put that car together. Then we look at the entire universe.
We look at like stones. Nobody put those stones there. They didn't like make the stones, right? They formed naturally, right? Same thing with like virtually any. What do you mean?
I don't believe they formed naturally. I believe they were put in place by a creator.
Okay, well, when you say something like, look at all the things around us right now, like look at my table, look at my chair, look, all of these things, somebody made them. And then I say, well, look at this rock, right? Like this is something that like we can see, nature made. And you say, well, no, it's the case that God made it. Well, then I can never present to you anything formed in nature that would like make it so that way you would believe that this thing formed naturally. So it's unfalsifiable, right? It's not a very interesting claim.
Well, the claim doesn't. The claim doesn't have to be interesting, because the thing is, what I'm telling you, the conversation that you don't want to have is really the reason why you don't believe in God. Most people's
it sounds
reasoning.
like you don't actually have an argument. Well, that's fine. You don't have an argument for.
That's
like,
fine.
the fact that
You don't know.
that is
You don't want to believe my argument. It's fine.
The origin of nature. But okay, that's fine. Then we can get into, I guess, the discussion that you would want to have, I guess.
No, because what I'm saying is when you believe in God, or if you have a belief in God or in a creator, you're subject to that creator's rules, laws, judgments, and opinions. And you, or most atheists, just want to be under their own viewpoint, and they want to be their own God, and they just want to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah,
And then they
well,
want to,
obviously,
and then they want to make moral claims, right? Like, oh, I'm a good person. But then they say, oh, everything's subjective and up to somebody's opinions. And then they play games with the truth. They play games with the law. They play games with everything. So
I mean,
it's
not
because
really
you
for
guys,
what
so
the point is.
ultimately, as an atheist, you guys just don't want to be subject to God. That's all.
Well,
That's really
I
what it
mean,
boils down to.
when you say like I don't want to be subject, I would be fine with like being subject to God if I had good reason to believe He exists. But you so
No,
far
you
you haven't presented an argument as to why
no,
He
you
exists.
wouldn't, because the Bible says you have enough information, and you just don't want to listen. You don't want to
The
see it.
Bible says I have enough information. Okay,
Yeah, it does.
so how would you prove that exactly?
That the Bible says that. I could read it to you, but
No,
you
no,
won't
no, no,
believe that
no.
it's the word of
That I
God.
actually do have enough information to come to that conclusion.
Well, the Bible says you do.
Well, okay, but I'm asking for the argument for that. Like
Well,
because
I
the
gave,
Bible says it, therefore it's true, right? That's
well, I gave you the arguments, right?
you.
You have
You just
you
repeated the
have
claim again.
no. I gave you the arguments, bro. I told you you have creation, you have your conscience, and you have your morality that is innate. Those are proofs of God. You get it? They go, oh yeah, that makes sense. When I speak to you, the atheists, yeah, I just deny it. Yeah, I don't think it's good information, which is fine.
Because
And it
it's
goes
not a
back,
good argument.
but it goes back ultimately to what I was saying and what you agreed to, that you like to be your own God. You like to come up with your own rules, your own morality, and you want to do whatever you want to do. Because that's what ultimately non-belief in God does. Because it says, for although they knew God, they did not glorify him nor thank him, but in their thinking became futile and foolish. Although
Well,
they
no,
claimed to,
the reason why I'm an
although they
atheist is
claimed
because
to be
people.
wise,
Yeah,
they
so the reason
became
why I'm an
fools.
atheist. Yeah, the reason why I'm an atheist is because whenever I talk to a theist and I'm asking for epistemic warrant, they either beg the question and give like unfalsifiable positions and really bad arguments. That's why. That's not because I want to quote unquote be my own god. I mean, obviously, it's going to be the case that I enjoy like freedom and things like that, but I would convert if you give me like a good argument, right? But so far, you haven't given me a good argument.
No, it's
Like,
not a good enough argument
here's
for
a great example, right?
you.
Here's a great example. I could just say, well, everything was designed by nature, and you can ask me, like, well, why is that the case? And I just say, well, look, it's look at this rock and look at these like trees and like look at all these like metamorphic rocks in the ground, and I could just be like, look, they were designed by nature, therefore everything was designed by nature. It's an inductive case, right? I'm just making the exact same argument in the exact opposite position.
What I'm telling you is that at a base level, these arguments are nice. But when you parse them out and you go deeper, you start to collapse upon yourself.
Okay, yeah, well, let's get there.
I'm telling you, I'm just telling you.
Well, let's get there. Like, what's that about? Like, show that, I guess.
So let me ask you, what is language?
What is language? It's
Yeah.
just gonna be like, yeah, like so a formal language or like a natural language.
Like me and you, what we're speaking right now.
Sure. So it's gonna be like me using sounds to pick out predicates that observed in the in nature, and I'm trying to, I guess, communicate those things to you, and either turn them into propositions, right? I guess like tell you to do things, ask you questions to help my own understanding. It's just sort of a tool for communication.
So that information, the information that we use in language, the information, does it have value?
You use it. That's too vague. I don't know what you mean.
Like
Anything.
like if somebody gives you a fact or an idea, does it have value?
It can, to me.
Okay, so you believe it would have value. Now that's an immaterial thing, right?
Sure, you can grant that.
Okay. Now is that that information, since it's immaterial, how can you reduce the value of that material using a materialist physical and chemical worldview?
Wait, who said I was a materialist?
I'm just using, okay, an atheist worldview. There you go. How can you?
Oh,
How
you
does
just said they're
that
mind
have
dependent.
value? I'll just say how does that have value?
Sure. Well, you could just say like value is going to be instantiated in human minds.
Oh my lord! All right.
But what's the contradiction? What's the contradiction?
Because you lose yourself once you get to like meaning and language and
How did I lose myself?
interpretations of symbols and understanding
Wait, how did I lose myself?
and context. Those things cannot be measured materially.
Wait, who said number one? Like, who said I was like measuring the material? I'm not sure how that makes much sense.
That for example, you just said that something like language that provides information that is immaterial and has value and cannot be reduced by chemistry or physics. Where does that value and come from? That meaning come from, and how do you value the meaning of that?
Well, value is just going to be like indexed to human minds. It's going to like be indexed to certain phenomenological experiences, right? Like it could be like a promotion of eudaimonia, right? It could be could help me like pragmatically, I guess, to ultimately help with my eudaimonia or flourishing, whatever. Like it could be indexed to natural effects.
It's just like a chemical reaction.
It is a chemical reaction. I mean, it could be brought upon by a chemical reaction, right? Like the predicate could be instantiated because of a chemical reaction, but the actual predicate or property itself doesn't have to be a chemical reaction.
Okay, so like I said, okay, so once again, you're saying that if something had meaning or has meaning that's immaterial, that meaning is measured by, again, what, chemical reactions in our brain?
I don't know what measured, like the meaning is measured.
Yeah. How do you measure it? Where does that measure of the meaning come from? If it's immaterial, it's not physical.
Oh yeah, I guess like you're just asking like how do you know, like how would I know how much meaning something has? Well, it would just be like a measurement of, I guess it would just be like a measurement of how much like eudaimonia it would give me.
So how much of a chemical? How much of a chemical?
Hold on, can I finish? It would be like a purely like mind dependent process.
So how much of a chemical reaction?
Well, I have first person privileges into my own brain, right? So I know like how much like pleasure and pain that I receive. So I mean, I can measure it. There's not going to be like, I mean, I could quantify it into units and then do that, but I don't usually do that because there's no reason for me to do it, but I could.
So once again, it's just a chemical reaction, right? That's what you're saying.
Well, it's like it's causally brought upon by a chemical reaction, but it doesn't have to be the chemical reaction itself. It could be a property that's like brought upon by a chemical reaction.
Yeah, but that's the point that I'm making. If you agree that these things are immaterial and have a metaphysical value that's immaterial, what I'm saying is in a materialist worldview, in an atheist worldview, where does that meaning come from? How does that have value? How do you even understand value? How do you measure that? If you can only measure things that are physical, that you can understand. Because what you're saying right now is you're just guessing that it's your brain sparking.
Well, I just don't like, wait, is he guessing that it's your brain?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm honestly not really sure what you're getting across.
Because you can't trust your brain because it's a random process. So you don't even know if the process is working properly the way it's supposed to.
Wait, I would need an argument for that. But because like my brain is a random process, therefore.
Oh no, I forgot. You said that in your worldview, the universe is necessary. It just exists. So
well, I think it can be. It's possible, but that has nothing to do with whether or not, like, since my brain. Number one, I'm not really sure how you're getting to the idea that my brain is going to be a natural process. And I think that like evolution in of itself is going to be a natural process. I think there are things that are involved in that process that are non-random, like guiding processes, right? So I'm not convinced that like since my brain was a product of natural selection or evolution, and therefore like I can't trust my reasoning or I can't have first person privileges into my own mind. This sounds like the argument from reason, which fails on many levels. Because you could just say something like, well, not like being able to trust your reasoning and being able to utilize reasoning is going to aid in your survival, right? Such that I could trust my own reasoning or something, right?
Yeah, but what do you mean you can? That's what you already do, bro.
I said can, yeah.
Yeah, that's what you already do.
Yeah. So what's the problem?
But there's nothing. What I'm saying is that you're proving my point.
There's no problem.
You just agree to disagree, which is fine. What I'm saying is that
asking. So there is no wait. So is there a problem with what I said or no?
I don't have a problem with this. Your opinion.
Okay. Well, so then when you said something like, well, you can't like know like what's going on inside your own brain, you don't have an argument for that. You don't have a refutation.
Well, if you're because you're saying you don't agree with certain things that other atheists agree with. You have your own thing where it says the world is necessary. So if it's necessary, then that's just how it runs. Okay, fine.
Well, it has
But
nothing to do with.
But my point is, how do you know it's necessary?
Well, I just said I don't know that it's necessary. And this has nothing to do with what I was saying earlier. With just now, like, can you recapitulate what I was saying?
No, like the point that I was making, and the point that I'm gonna continue to make is that certain things, like I said, you're just gonna argue it down to a materialist level, and then you'll say I'm not a materialist. Like you said, that something that we could measure, that we know has value, that's immaterial, that's not physical. The way we measure it is through our body having chemical reactions.
When you say like it's through your body having chemical reactions, like, and that's
your
the way
brain.
that you measure it. I mean, so I don't think that you really have knowledge as to like what like being a materialist is, or think like what dualism is. So like the idea is that so immaterial things can be caused by material things, right? But the things in question, and they themselves are going to be immaterial. So you can say something like, that the system in your brain, I guess, or like, ever heard of neutral monism before? Like you can have this sort of idea that like particles in of themselves have mental properties, don't have minds, but they do have mental properties. And when like organized into certain patterns, right, they can sort of instantiate minds, right? And the mind itself would be like an immaterial thing, right? It doesn't have matter, even if it's going to be facilitated by matter, right? So like you don't have to be a materialist and atheist, right? What I'm saying doesn't contradict itself.
Who in your example you gave me, who organizes those atoms with alleged mental properties to organize in the proper way and then have the proper effect?
Well, there's no proper effect. I don't know what that means, but as far as like what causes it to have the effect of instantiating a mind, well, then it's just going to say, it's just going to be like evolution, right? Simple as that.
And evolution is it's true, right?
I would say, yeah, it's probably true. It's the best explanation for biodiversity, and I think it's probably
you're not a
you have enough
materialist?
evidence to say it's true.
How are you not like a materialist then if you believe in evolution 100%? If you because evolution literally explains how we're here, and then you told me, oh, I didn't know.
Well, so you can have different accounts as to like the nature of our universe and still hold that evolution is true, right? Like when I said I don't know, I was specifically talking about whether or not there's like the universe or like the natural world at an initial state versus like an infinite regress versus a quantum fluctuation. That's what I was saying. Like, well, I don't know. But
Okay,
like, I do believe that evolution is true. That's why I was asking you beforehand, like, how far back do you want to go?
Yeah, that's fine. But this once again goes back to what I told you at the beginning.
I'm not really sure.
It does. It goes back to what I told you from the beginning.
You told me many things from the beginning.
That there's not going to be anything that I can bring to you that'll make you say, oh yeah, that's fine.
Well, yeah, because I haven't been given a good argument yet. Like every single time you were saying like, well, you can't have this because of this, or you can't have this because of this. Then I was saying, well, no, you could just say X, Y, Z. You can say X, Y, Z, and then you would just say like, well, okay, then that's fine. Okay, well then obviously it's going to be the case that if you don't have like any argument, then like. Yeah, I'll let you deal with that. Like, if you don't have any argument, then, like, I'm not going to be convinced. This is my whole point is, like, nobody's ever given me a good argument.
Well, it's not that nobody's giving you a good argument. There are good arguments. You just don't like those arguments.
Okay, well, when you say, like, you've given a good argument, like, can you give me an argument that isn't question begging or isn't unfalsifiable?
It's not a begging the question. It's just That's what reason says. But like I said before, you don't want to believe.
Well, when you say that's just what reason says, so then
That's what my reasoning tells me. I was able to see it. I was able to see it. I was able to see it. Many others are able to see it. You don't want to see it.
Maybe it's just because it's like going to be unconvincing, right? Like I gave you the same logic that you gave me earlier as for creation, and then you didn't respond to that at all, right? I just said I'll just use them to make your argument.
I did respond to it because those things are created. We know that they're created. If they evolve, they were created.
Wait, I would need an argument for that because they're laws. They're created.
No, not laws. I'm talking about, you said creation, right? You just said that nature had a necessary state, but then you said you believe in evolution. If you believe in evolution, that's a process.
Yes.
From created things, because evolution is connected to the Big Bang. That means there was a cause, a beginning.
But that doesn't mean that. Well, hold on. But that doesn't mean that like quantum fields themselves were created, or like the laws of physics themselves were created, right? Like I would agree. That's obviously not going to be contentious. That like you could say like stars were created from collapsing like protons initially, right? Like obviously that's the case. But like I'm not convinced that anything in reality is like created by an intelligent designer. The argument you gave for that, by the way, is that like look at your desk, look at your chair. You created those things, right? Like you have good reason to believe that an intelligence created those things. But then I asked you, okay, what about a rock? What about like the ocean? What about like various different cliffs and stuff that were created by erosional process? Those things were created by nature. And you said, well, no, they're ultimately being created by God. And I'm just saying like, well, okay, then there's nothing I can give you that exists right now that would convince your mind or make it so that way you would believe that nature can create things or things can be created through a non-intelligent process. So then I could just literally say
exactly.
the exact opposite.
Okay,
right? I could just say something like, okay.
Hold on. Because you just said that nature, which creates. So now you're telling me it's possible for intelligence to come from a non-intelligent thing. That's what you said just now.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Absolutely.
All right. Nah, that makes no sense, bro.
Okay.
This is what I mean. This is what I mean about your worldview. It collapses. You literally just said that intelligence can come from non-intelligence. That's crazy.
Yeah, what's the argument for that?
It doesn't make sense. It's not possible.
Well, it's not. You're saying it's not possible. Is that you're saying it's not logically possible?
Logically, that doesn't make sense, bro.
Okay, what's the contradiction?
How can intelligence come from non-intelligence?
You're just asking a question. Well, you're just asking a question. Questions aren't truth apt. I'm asking for an argument.
Oh, bro.
So you don't have
serious?
Are you serious as an argument?
Where have you seen in the real world that intelligence comes from non-intelligence?
That's another question. I'm asking for the argument as to why it's logically impossible for like intelligence to come from non-intelligence.
Because where the non-intelligence has no intelligence. So where does the intelligence come from? Where does the process of intelligence come from? The process of learning come from?
Well, you're just saying that because the intelligence doesn't have an intelligence, that's just question begging again.
It's not question begging. Something has to come from something. Things don't just poof out of nowhere randomly, bro.
Wait, hold on. You said that things have to come from somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay, where did God come from? Is God a thing?
No, it's not a thing.
Okay, so God isn't a thing. So then what is God exactly?
He's like I said before, God is the uncaused cause.
Well, hold on. So what do you mean by a thing?
God is the uncaused cause.
Did you hear what I question asked?
Yeah, he cannot be grasped. He cannot be understood.
Okay, well, when you say like he cannot be understood, like I don't really know then why I would ever accept a view that like I can't understand or is completely unintelligible, but that's besides the point. I'm still wondering like what the contradiction is by saying that like intelligence can come from a non-intelligent source. You still haven't pointed out the contradiction. All you said is that, well, a non-intelligent source isn't intelligent, but that's just question begging, right? Assuming that like things have to come from, or intelligent beings have to come from an intelligence. So can you give me like an actual argument or no?
So no, because for me that makes sense. That's why.
No, okay, no. So you can't give an argument. You can't point out the contradiction because you said it was logically impossible.
How is that not a contradiction?
You're
intelligence coming from non-intelligence.
That's not a what's the P and not P?
If it's non-intelligent, where does it develop the process of intelligence?
That's a question. That's not,
I'm
you're not
asking
calling
you.
that a contradiction.
I'm asking you. That doesn't make any
That's
sense.
a question.
Yeah.
You said it was logically. All right, fine.
My
I'll let
point to
you.
make.
I'll let you. I'll let you off on this one. Okay, that's fine.
You don't need to let me off.
We
No,
can.
no,
We can.
no, no,
We can
no.
go into.
You
I
don't
can
need
give you
to.
an
What I'm
account.
telling you is you don't need to let me off. This just goes back to the conversation, to what I told you at the beginning.
Well, I am letting you
There's
off
no
because you made a claim.
argument. There's no argument that I can make that's good enough to convince you because you don't want to be convinced. You don't want to believe in God because you want to do your own thing.
Okay.
So
By the
you
way,
believe.
Zach wants to ask you a question. How
You
can
believe.
water come from non-water?
You'll believe, right?
Okay.
You'll believe things that are ridiculous, like intelligence coming from non-intelligence or things randomly generating on itself because it had a necessary component somewhere in eternity past. I don't know what that means. And that's the case. That's what you guys want to believe. That's what you want to believe. It's fine. Now the guy said, host, can water come from non-water? Who created the process of H2O that makes it sure that when we know we put those together, it always creates water? Because if
Wait,
it's
was that a
random, it
question?
shouldn't always create water. No, I'm saying
Well, you asked a question. You didn't give an answer.
water comes from H2O, which is a process that was put in place.
Water is H2O. Well, that's the
It is
reference.
that's the buzz. That's my point.
Well, but
You
when you say like,
you
I'm
need
asking
2
where that came
oxygen,
from.
1 hydrogen. If you don't have that, you don't have water. So now that law is put in place that it works like that, that it has to work like that.
Yeah, but you're not giving me a reason as to why non-intelligence or like intelligence can't come from non-intelligence. You're not giving that argument.
That's fine. I don't have to give you the argument. You think it's fine. That's fine.
Okay, can I ask you some questions about your worldview? Because it doesn't sound like this is going anywhere. So, like,
You can ask
do
about
you
my
believe that
worldview.
God created time?
For us, yes.
Wait, so is God non-spatiotemporal?
When he created the universe, time became a thing.
Okay, so is God non-spatiotemporal?
What do you mean, like eternal?
I'm asking, like, is God outside of space and time? Like, no concept of time applies to God.
I believe he's. I think time. I don't think time doesn't apply to him because then we wouldn't be able to call him eternal because eternal is a measurement of time.
So you don't accept classical theism then?
No, I agree that he's outside of space and time and matter, but he understands time.
Wait, so this doesn't make much sense. So
Because he established.
So he understands time, but I'm asking, like, does he, like, before the universe was a thing, like, before time was a thing, I guess, according to you, was there time?
We would call. I don't know what we would call. I don't know what he would call it. I know we call it eternity past because we measure it. So.
Well, I don't know
Right.
I don't know what that means. So, like,
Meaning
you
that
say, like, you don't know what to call
prior
it. I'm
to
asking you, like, was there
prior-
any, like, change occurring?
Prior to the Big Bang or prior to the creation of the universe, time possibly could have existed. I don't know. That's what I'm
You said
saying.
that time could have possibly existed. Like, was there any moment where time didn't exist?
That's my point. We measure it like that, right? We use it as a measurement, so we understand it. That's why we are able to measure it. But
did
time
God
works.
create time or not?
My point is, time works differently for God.
Okay, so I'm not getting a clear answer. So is God temporal or is he not?
In our measurement, God is eternal and exists in eternity, past, present, and future.
What was the question I asked you?
You asked me if God is outside of time.
No. I
What
asked
did
you
you
if
ask
God
me?
was temporal or not.
Meaning bound by time?
Yes.
I told you I don't think so.
Okay. Does he go through change? Does his mind go through change?
No, he doesn't change his mind.
Okay, so his okay, so he doesn't change. Okay, that's great. So so you believe then that at some point time was created, whether or not it was our universe or like another one or something like that. Okay. So I guess when we say that something was created, would you agree that to say something is created, there must be an antecedent moment where X doesn't exist, and then something brings about X to exist on a consequent moment?
That's based on how we understand creation, though.
I'm asking, like, is that when you say that God created time, is that the sense you're using it?
What I'm saying is time exists as a concept because that's how we measure it or measure time or what we define as time. But that came to exist when God created the universe. Prior to that, I do not know, nor would I ever have an idea of what that force is, or what that force, in what way it works with God or reacts to God, or how God views it, because the way he sees time and understanding is different from us. That's my argument. You're applying things, you're using understanding and measurements given to us as creation and trying to place it on the creator. That doesn't work.
Okay, so then why is it the case that like you say like, hey, like you believe something ridiculous like non-intelligence coming from intelligence, and then I ask you for your competing worldview or like your competing like explanation, and you're giving me something completely incoherent?
I'm not giving you something that's coherent. I'm telling you that the measures and the laws.
No, you are giving me something incoherent.
The measurements, laws, rules, understandings, everything, morality, all those things that you understand and know, you're applying it. You're trying to apply it on the person who's outside of that, who created
Right, exactly,
it all.
which is why it's incoherent.
It's not incoherent. So wait, God has to be bound by the laws he set?
Wait, hold on. What do you think incoherent means?
He's incoherent.
It means
Doesn't make sense.
unintelligible.
It's unintelligible. Doesn't make sense. How that doesn't make sense
Right.
to you?
So like, if you can't describe it in a way to have it make sense, then by definition, it's incoherent. Yes or no?
That literally, what I'm saying makes sense.
And okay, so it does make sense. So then,
okay, wait.
How when you say
not,
like, well, there is creation,
sense?
God created time, but He created time in a way that doesn't comport with your understanding of creation. Like, how does that exactly make sense?
That's not what I said. All I said was that the understanding of time, how it works and what it is, would be different. Would be different than God's understanding.
Okay, so then what is God's understand? Like, what is God's understanding of time?
I don't know.
Exactly, which is why it's completely incoherent. I have no idea.
It's not incoherent. Makes no sense. How does
that
make
sense? No sense, dude. That makes absolutely
no sense. So if God created the entire universe and He knows everything, does time work linear for Him?
Well, I don't know what you mean by creation. I don't know what you mean by creation because you haven't given me an account.
Oh Lord.
Wait. So you do. So you have a definition of creation then that you're using that's coherent. I'll give it then. Give the
everything,
definition.
The entire universe and everything that's inside of it and outside of it. God made it all.
So your definition of creation is everything in the universe. Then that's what it means to create something. Everything inside the universe.
Yeah. Wait. You asking me about my definition of creation or what God created?
I'm asking for something to create something. What does that mean?
It's the action or process of bringing something into existence.
Okay, perfect. Right. So the action or process of bringing something into existence. So to bring something into existence, you would agree that requires a time where X doesn't exist and then a time where X does exist, right?
In regards to creation, yes, not God though.
Yeah, exactly. When you say like, well, not God though. Well, okay, hold on. Yeah. Could you explain that to me?
Because God is the uncaused cause outside of space, outside of time, outside of matter, outside of all these things.
So God, you're still not giving me an explanation as to how God creates things.
What do you mean how God creates things?
Like when you say like God created time, what does that look like exactly?
He established the universe. He established the planets. He established the rotations. He established everything. So once that was put in place, that is the understanding that we have of time because we measure time to those rotations.
Okay, yeah, right. So then if they were created, then they did not exist at one point in time, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I've been asking the whole time. Okay. So if God created time, right, then there must be a time where time didn't exist because creation requires a time where X doesn't exist and then a time where X does exist, which means that there's a time where time doesn't exist. That's a contradiction.
Is that a contradiction for God?
It's simply a logical contradiction. There's your P and not P.
It's not a contradiction for God, though.
So wait, can God create a square circle?
Can God create a square circle?
Yeah.
If He wanted to, probably, yeah.
Right. Okay. And this is exactly why I don't take theistic arguments seriously, is because I'm getting like clear contradictions involved. You're doing something completely incoherent. Obviously, it's going to be the case that I'm not going to take your position seriously. I don't know why you're saying mine is ridiculous when you're giving me like the most.
So yeah, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to go back and forth. We're not going to agree. We're just not going to agree. I literally made the point. He said, you're not going to see it. You don't want to see God because everything is material. Everything is back to human definition. There's no definition outside of a human's definition that can be greater or outside of our understanding.